Welcome to the Mechanical PE Exam Prep Podcast, the podcast where I give mechanical engineers like you the tools and motivation to get your professional engineering license and take your career to the next level. In this episode, I speak with professional engineer Peter Markarian, who shares his inspiring journey from marine engineering to healthcare project management, including his unique path through missionary work and forensic engineering. He opens up about the challenges of balancing life transitions, a demanding job, and PE exam prep, revealing how he overcame setbacks with resilience and strategic study habits. Peter's insights on problem solving, prioritization, and humility offer invaluable lessons for aspiring engineers. We talk about how Peter turned obstacles into opportunities and emerged as a licensed professional engineer. Peter, welcome to the podcast. Excited to have you on. And it's been a few years since we worked together, but it's not too late to say congratulations on getting your PE.
I appreciate it. Thank you. It's great to be here.
And where I'd like to start is just to hear a bit about your background academically, professionally, sort of everything setting the stage for the PE journey that that you can remember.
Sure. Well, I'll start kind of back, kind of towards my high school to college experience. I applied to five colleges coming out of high school, and I got into my bottom two. And I was like, oh, well, let me wait a little bit longer, kind of hold out, see what the top three colleges say. So waited, finally heard back. The deposit slip expired from my bottom two colleges, and when I heard back from my top three, I was not accepted. So
Wow.
Come a few months after high school, I wasn't going anywhere for college. So I was a little
How about
stressed out. Oh yeah, it was wild. It was my family was kind of scrambling, seeing if they had any connections with the schools I did get accepted to. I talked to the football coach of the schools that I was accepted to, and we're able to actually, funny enough, my grandmother had a connection with one of the school administrators, and that's what helped me get back put onto the admission list.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's so funny, like college application process and what a stressful time that can be for I mean, I remember going through it myself, and it's just the uncertainty, the waiting, and then, you're waiting and you wait too long and
Yep.
oh,
It's a waiting game. So I ended up going to my last choice in school, which ended up being half an hour from my house, to Mass Maritime Academy.
awesome.
And I looking back, I feel like it was the best decision for me. So it really made an impact on me, really helps me out. So if you don't know much about the maritime academies, I think there's about 5 in the country, and they focus on preparing mainly people to be captains and engineers on ships. And so when I was a freshman and I was first started to study, I was like, you know what? I grew up around boats, love boats. Let me go after being a decky or a captain on a ship. So they had like a little trial period. They called it sea term, where you went out on the school ship for about 2 months. And then as a freshman, you get to experience the different majors. And there's only like 8 majors in the school, very small. And after being on the bridge and being, in the navigational room, I was like, not for me, a little too boring, a little too stale. And then
Yeah, it was just once you get out there, there's just not a lot to do, I guess.
there's not, it's just, you just look out and, kind of making sure there's no boats coming across you. And, of course, there's some navigation and math and stuff involved, but
I see. Okay.
wasn't exciting to me. It wasn't scratching that itch I had.
Yeah.
And then I got into the engine room, and I felt like I was at like an amusement park, like seeing all the pipes, seeing all the different machinery around. Didn't like it was loud, but it kind of comes with the background. So I felt like it was a big giant puzzle to kind of figure out how everything worked. Once I started learning how different systems would transfer energy from one to another, like different heat exchangers, I was kind of blown away at just the effectiveness, the efficiency of all the different machinery, and how they condensed, all the systems you needed for. There was about 800 people on the ship. They condensed all the systems needed for 800 people onto this little small ship. And that was just really cool experience.
It makes me think about some of my early experiences walking through chiller plants and electrical rooms and buildings. And it's equally fascinating and overwhelming, especially for a young engineer. Like, what in the world is all of this? But the big difference there is that everything's so spread out. You may have a 1,000,000 square foot building. You're going to have the entire basement is going to be dedicated to a chiller plant. And then maybe there's a subfloor or a couple of, big areas on middle floors where there's electrical distribution, but everything's all spaced out and there's a lot of clearance and maintenance access around everything. But I would imagine on a ship, space is at a premium. So that all has to be jammed into fewer square feet,
Yeah, absolutely.
which makes it
Absolutely.
harder to study and walk around and ask questions. What's this and that?
When they, we were instructed, especially as freshmen, to do piping and instrumentation diagrams, and that was probably one of the hardest parts, is because sometimes you would see where you could see the pipes throughout the engine room, but once it went up or to the side or down in the ship, you really had no idea where it went.
Right.
So it was a challenge.
And that's when you have to kind of fall back on your foundational knowledge of like, what is this? What should it be doing? Where should it be
Right.
going? And you kind of start to connect the dots. But it's just hard to build that from the bottom up if you don't have somebody, with you teaching you, kind of holding your hand at the beginning, and then, once you start. So okay, so where from there?
So after that, I chose the marine engineering program and started studying. And then about a year or two later, I got the opportunity to do they call it a commercial ship. It's it's like a co-op basically, where they take a sophomore or a junior and they put you out on an internship on a ship somewhere in the world for a couple months.
Ooh.
So I went all the way over to the middle of the Indian Ocean, south of the Maldives, for about 3 months on a 1,000-foot naval vessel, and it was super cool just to see. It was a military vessel that had enough machinery for 1 battalion of Marines. So
Huh.
a lot of it was tanks and Hummers and different vehicles, and there was only 30 people on the ship. It
Oh.
wasn't populated at all, really.
Huh.
But we
How many
had
students aside from yourself?
just one other student, one other
Ah.
classmate. Yeah, and I enjoyed it a lot. It was a fun time, but it was at that time in my life where actually I started to get more intentional about my Christian faith. I made some significant changes my sophomore year when I went. And at the end of my trip, I was like, you know what? I feel like it'd be really challenging, not just to build a career out of going away for 6 months and coming back for 6 months, going away for 3 months and back 3 months or weeks at a time. Because I feel like I'd be living two different lives, and having two different friend groups and never feeling like there was synergy.
That's a
Um,
really great insight for a person to have during that kind of early phase in life. I feel like a lot of folks will follow a career path, and go a fair distance down that path and then come to that realization later. And it's not impossible, but it's harder to make the shift. And
yeah,
by getting there early, you were kind of able to course correct, not
it
to
was.
use a naval pun, but
Yeah, and you're right. Actually, a lot of my classmates and people that previously graduated, they might be in the industry for 2, maybe 5 years, and then be like, you know what, I don't like this anymore. This is too hard of a life. I mean, I'll be honest, guys, you're making lots of money as you're shipping out for all this time because you're not spending it back at home.
right, yeah, you can't really consume much. You're just
Right.
earning.
So, and I felt like it'd be hard to develop, a spiritual, I guess, family and be part of a church group if I'm always traveling and stuff. So I made the pivot from marine engineering to facilities engineering. So it's kind of like building and power plant management, plant operations. I was just joking with some friends a couple of weeks ago how basically my degree in facilities engineering is like I'm a licensed janitor, which isn't true. It's a little more robust than that. You know,
It
you
definitely is. Yeah. I mean, I like to think of the profession as like, we're like a good referee in a
yeah,
sports game. If you don't notice us because you're watching the game, that's probably a good thing. It means we're doing a good job. It means
that's right.
everything works and we're kind of invisible. But then when you kind of start to think about all the things that need to happen in a building, somebody has to make that happen.
Yep.
So after you made the change to facilities engineering, where did you go from there?
So after I made the change from marine engineering to facilities engineering, I did a few other internships in Boston, and then I took a job in Boston, actually doing tab work, which is testing and balancing for HVAC systems. Once new HVAC systems get installed, they don't just work out of the box. It's not like a window unit you put in your house for AC. You have to tweak it and dial it, and there's some different valves to adjust and different dampers to allow different airflows that the engineer of record specifies, which is really cool, and it'll kind of bring my story full circle. So I did that for a couple of years, and it was difficult work because, especially being on the roof in the winter, working on rooftop units and working on different package units, it was a little cold, you know.
Yeah, Boston.
I then got the opportunity actually to work for the church that I was part of.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, so I served. My wife and I actually we served as missionaries for the next 5 years.
Whoa.
Yeah, we served for the next 5 years as missionaries. Went from basically living in Boston to we lived in Syracuse for a bit, and then we made a big jump all the way down to Florida, to Gainesville, Florida for about a year. And then we did the last couple of years in Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
And when you were missionaries, you paused the engineering track completely,
I,
or
yeah, I paused everything. I was actually, to jump real quick back to my testing and balancing days, I took the FE twice. I took it right after college. I took a prep program at my university to help me prep for the FE. I tried to take it. I didn't pass it. Then I tried to take it one more time and I didn't pass it again. And at that point, my employer was like, "Hey, I don't care if you have it or not. It doesn't really help us out." So I was like, "Cool. I don't have to take any more tests for the rest of my life. I'm all set." So I did put everything in engineering on pause because I figured, if I'm going to make a significant change, I'd rather try to make it early. So in the event where I do have to go back to it, I'm still relatively young and will have some opportunity.
Right. And you did have some very good early experience. So it was very much a pause. It's not like you were, but it's a significant commitment. I would imagine it took a ton of courage to make that decision. And when you did that, did you know you were looking at a 5-year commitment, or was it kind of a year at a time thing?
It was kind of like a for the foreseeable future.
So you weren't sure that you would necessarily resume, or?
Yeah. It
Wow.
was, I knew I would always have my engineering degree, but I was never sure if I'd ever actually use it again to its capacity. So kind of one thing led to another, and my wife and I started getting reintroduced back into, secular work, if you will. And I got a connection with a guy, part of a forensic engineering company.
Oh,
In
that's very funny you should mention that because my last guest was a forensic engineer.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to that episode, but continue.
Yeah, sure. So they didn't do just forensic engineering. They did forensics and design, mainly for I'll say like apartment type buildings and school, like elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, some residential houses, and then some commercial, but not very big. It's a very small, kind of full service engineering firm. But they got their name stamped in history because they helped develop the Florida Statute 558, which is a turnover process. So when a developer wants to build a bunch of townhomes, right, and it has a HOA, well, once the development is built out to a certain percentage, it officially gets handed over to the HOA. The HOA will hire a third-party engineering firm to then come in, review the record drawings, review the specs, make sure what the developer said he was going to install and do was actually according to the plans.
Okay, so the HOA company doesn't get involved until it's basically almost done, because then they're verifying that they're being handed what they were expecting.
Exactly.
Is an HOA a profit generating enterprise? Like how should I never really thought about that, but
That's a great question.
they collect a fee.
Yep.
I guess so, because somebody has to be compensated for the effort to administer and organize.
To my knowledge, a lot of times it's more of a volunteer basis. So like the HOA, they'll have like a president,
Oh,
treasurer.
because they live there, so they're incentivized to make the community
Yep.
as, okay.
And sometimes they'll hire a property management company to really handle all the intricacies. Because not everyone that's on an HOA board is engineer or,
Right. They're just kind of managing it
contractor.
and gathering those funds and directing them to the right people, like
Yep,
to basic stuff like landscaping and removing snow, and maybe not
exactly.
in Florida, but
Yeah. Yep,
okay.
exactly.
Sorry for the sidebar.
No, you're fine. You're fine. It's good. Um, so that was really cool. I mean, I never even heard of forensic engineering, and it really got me familiar with Florida building code and, um, obviously how to look things up in the code book. Also, different design standards that are required for either the residence or commercial, and when it all applies. And so I started getting a lot more experience. And actually, it was such a small firm. I was working with the civil engineer and structural engineer, and not just mechanical and plumbing. So I kind of
Right.
got a whole mixture of disciplines.
Yeah, I feel like that's really valuable to be in a full service spot because you're wearing different hats and you're learning about everybody else's domain and maybe
Mhm.
doing some of that work yourself. Get a really good sense of how everything is connected. And then that's going to carry you later on. But I think that's what you're seeing now, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is. And what's cool, it kind of feeds into kind of my where I'm at currently. So my wife and I, we want to be closer to family. All our families in the Northeast and the Midwest. And if we're to take a drive up to visit family, it's like 2.5 days with spending a night and everything. So we were like, you know what, let's see if we can move closer. And so I started looking for different jobs, and a recruiter actually found me on LinkedIn. So if anyone listening to this podcast is looking for a new job, sometimes recruiters can help you get placed. And it worked out for me good,
Yeah.
really well. So I found a great job up here in Raleigh, North Carolina, where I'm at now. And I'm in the now the healthcare engineering space. So
Ah,
the kind of my role right now is I'm a project manager. I'm kind of helping tie in architecture, structural engineering, civil engineering, electrical engineering, plumbing, mechanical, tying all these different disciplines together to making sure there's a complete set that talks to each other. And what's I think one of the coolest things about doing healthcare engineering is now I never even really considered, and kind of go back to what you said, Dan, like, behind the scenes kind of work. I never considered the systems that are involved in healthcare. These buildings need to operate 24/7. And if there's an outage, they need to like not have almost any downtime at all. It's very
yeah.
minuscule.
Yeah, there's, human lives at stake, right? It's one of the most critical, it's true critical, right? Like when people talk about critical systems, a lot of times their minds go right to like data centers because Google and Amazon, don't want to have failures and downtime because of
Mm-hmm.
business impact. And, how many how many millions of dollars per minute are they losing when that stuff's not on?
Yep.
But healthcare is much closer to home. It's people are there, so.
Yeah. So like for example, with one of the things that we studied in our to get prepped for the PE is like air changes per hour. There's it's called the FGI, federal, not the federal. The acronym is escaping me right now. But anyway, so there's a code that requires different air change rates in different parts of the hospital with different positive and negative pressures in
Hmm.
reference to the rooms. And practicing for my PE, it was helpful to kind of start to get familiar and start to get some just reps. That's one thing that you talk about, Dan, in the training is getting the reps and getting that continuity. And that really it's helpful as you deal with different types of rooms that have different requirements. And sometimes those requirements are very not robust, but they're very, I forgot the word.
Specific or
I would say, yeah. Sometimes those requirements are just very specific, and yeah, they have to be it's a technical challenge to design.
right, especially when they're so different from one another. So you have some rooms that want to be kept at negative pressure versus positive pressure. And
Mhm.
what's the idea there to make sure that you don't have air mixing in spaces that are potentially contaminated or more likely to carry germs, or patients that are there are more susceptible if there are, that kind
Yeah,
of thing?
that's precisely it. A lot of it is for infection control.
Okay.
Even when contractors come and renovate part of the hospital, they need to supply the air in such a way or remove air from a space in order that there's not all this dust and contaminants that are just go right into the rest of the hospital to make
Right.
everyone sick.
Yeah, it's not just a nuisance that there's dust like there would be in a typical, office construction environment. It's again much more sensitive, just like anything in a hospital.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, there's so much to think about there. I would imagine for you as the project manager, it's like you're managing the trades and trying to orchestrate the work and sequence it in the right way. But it's more than just what a typical project manager has to do because you have to think about the methods and how to protect the environment at every stage in the process. So that's got to be a very unique and
It's all
challenging
about
process.
it's all about phasing and just different steps and sequences. They have to do one thing, then another, then another. One of the interesting parts about where I'm at now in my career is, not only are we just dealing with high level owners of the hospital or different facility directors, it's getting time with the users, the clinicians that are going to be using the space, and making sure that it's accommodating to how they want it as well.
That sounds like a much better product for them too, because now they put a name to the face. If there's any concerns about how something's going to be done or how something went last week, they can ring you up and say, hey, we got to think about XYZ next time around, and
Right.
you get better and better that way. That's awesome. So, was having your PE a requirement for this role that you're in now, or nice to have? Kind of take me back to I believe you were in Florida still when we first started talking about the PE.
Yeah. So, short answer is no, it was not required for my current position. It's something that I started to pursue when I was in Florida working for my previous company. And because I wanted to get more, there's something about using math to make a client's space better. I don't know, it's super cool to me to see how systems work and simple math can help make a space come alive. So I started studying for my FE, and I studied almost every night for like 4 months straight.
Wow.
And I was really burning the candle at both ends. And I was really just trying to recall all I learned in college and make it all fresh and I'm not going to say exciting, but make it fresh and ready to remember when I got tested.
You can say it. You're in the safe space. The nerds are here if they're listening
Yeah,
to this.
that's right. But chemistry was not my strong suit, and trying to relearn chemistry was a challenge.
Yeah. And this was before my FE program existed. So, yeah, I had nothing to offer you at this point. You were kind of on your own.
Yeah, I used everything. I used YouTube. I used practice exams. There's a big yellow book. I forget the author of it, but he produces a lot of FE practice exam guides. And one of the things I really appreciate your program that really I feel like captured the heart of what I was trying to do for my FE was learn the principles. Because I feel like once you learn the principles, you can troubleshoot your way through to figure out how to address the problem at hand. So after about, yeah, so I started with my previous company, 4 months in, got my FE. I took the PE about 6 months after that, and I thought I passed it. I felt great about it. I was like, man, that was so much easier. It was simpler. It was more streamlined, and I did not pass it. And I was like, man, if I'm gonna do this again, I need more help. So that's where I found you.
Yeah, it's tough. A lot of times, it's not an uncommon story that I think when you take the exam and it seems like it goes well, but what may actually be happening is there's a lot of, you could say, trap answers. Another way to put it is reasonable answers based on a particular set of assumptions. And there's one assumption in there that is inverted or flipped the other way.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know what you don't know because you just haven't seen that one thing. And you could do, like, maybe there's 7 or 8 or 10 things that you have to do in order to solve a problem, and you're getting almost all of them right, which means you know a lot, right? But there's one that's critical, and that's going the other way. So that leads to this very unusual experience that candidates sometimes have, where they walk out feeling good because the answer that they selected, the answer that they calculated was offered as a choice. They circle it, you feel, oh, pat on the back. I must be on the right track. And then it doesn't go your way. So,
Yeah.
so then you and I connected. We got you on the program.
Yep.
And did you start right away? Did you need some time? Like, did anything change in your approach, either technically or tactically, after that point?
Yep, something did change. We ended up moving.
Oh, right when you were
So
getting going.
yeah, right when we're getting going, right as I scheduled my exam, we scheduled the move. And so I think, we got your course, or I got your course, and I had to shelf it for a little bit because I knew I had to get settled. 2 weeks after we got our apartment lease, we put an offer on a house, and then
So
it
you
got
moved.
accepted, and then we moved again.
When it rains, it pours.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then not about a month after that, I started working on this project. We don't normally take projects out of state. We took a project kind of as a client for a client over in Mississippi,
Oh,
and so I was flying out to Mississippi about once a month.
the states aren't as close together in the South.
They're not, man. They're spread away, spread far apart. It depends where you goes, where you go.
And that was like one of the first projects that you had down there.
And it was a big project. They wanted their 800,000 square foot hospital. They didn't have any as-builts, so they wanted new floor plans for the entire hospital that was existing, and then also where all the existing domestic water is located. So
That's
all
a
the
ton of
domestic
work.
hot and cold water piping and all the equipment associated with it. So for all my Revit users out there, I know you guys will struggle. It can be a fight to learn Revit, to incorporate it, and to do it for a really big project. So that I didn't feel great about studying in light of kind of that project kicking off.
A
So
new job, a big project,
yeah,
and travel right after a move.
exactly.
Yeah. So how did you work through all that?
So we started timing out the site visits for the next 6 to 8 months, and I was like, you know what? I do not want to just wait until this project is over because it's going to take a year. And
Hmm.
it did take a year to get over.
Yeah. 6 months becomes 8 months becomes
Yep.
a year. Yeah.
I was like, I gotta schedule it, a couple months in. So I scheduled it for March of 2024. And it was actually at the point where, because I pushed back the exam about twice, and I think they give you up to a year, push it back from your original scheduled date. So I was at the point where either I take it March of 24 or I don't take it again. Or
Still there? We froze.
yeah,
Oh, we're back.
I'm good. Sorry about that. It's my fault.
No, no worries. So you were saying you either take it in March of 24, what would happen?
So yeah, so either I take the exam in March of 24 or I'd have to pay for it again to take it afterward. Because
And sometime after that. Okay.
right. Because I think you can move it, you can push back your date for I think $50. But if you push it back like beyond a year when you first established that date, then I think they want to charge you all over again.
Okay. So you'd have to just, cancel that date and pick a
Yeah.
new one. I
So
see.
I was like, I don't just want to throw away a couple $100. I was like, let me buckle down and do this thing. So I started
And
putting,
I think you wanted to do it too. So it was like it wasn't so much maybe that I'm sure the $200 was enough to get you thinking, but
yeah,
you probably had to do some soul searching and think like,
yeah,
all right, like when is the right season in my life to do this?
because it will never be perfect. The conditions will never be ideal, and it's something I realize is something that I have some friends that are talking about getting their PE and they're waiting for different things, and it's never going to be ideal. It's
That's a
in
huge takeaway. For anyone who's listened to this conversation from the beginning knows that you're very thoughtful about kind of the future and, what you want to create in your life and not just kind of going at it haphazardly. So, it was important for you to move. It was important for you to take this new opportunity and there
Mhm.
was an exciting project to do. So, the PE kind of had to go on the back burner. That all makes sense. The question is, once it's there, and a lot of people find themselves in exactly this position, something happens where it goes to the back burner. That's okay.
Yeah.
Question is, what do you do once it's there? How do you form a new plan? And you figured out a way to get through that. It was delayed a little bit, and then you said, "All right, I still want to do it, sometime within that year."
And it was a challenge because I knew that we were just trying to establish friend groups. We were getting plugged in and integrated with the church group that we're a part of, and I'm trying to get to know my coworkers. And I had to say no to a lot of things that I didn't want to say no to. I had to say no to some hobbies like I like doing or going for a walk with my wife. There were many nights where my wife would go to bed with me not in it because I'd be up studying learning, practicing, training, calculating, and getting the reps in,
Yeah. Yeah. It affects your daily routine. It's all of those things. It's little
Yep.
things, it's big things, and it kind of adds up. And it starts to feel like, geez, this is like all I'm doing. I'm grabbing any spare minute I can and shoveling it into these pockets of time so that I can have a big window to do the work.
Yeah.
And this is going to be going on for months. So how was that once you kind of formed that routine? Did you find yourself resisting it, leaning into it?
It felt familiar because I was so rigid and focused during my FE studying process that I was like, okay, it's not going to be as bad as my FE studying, but I know it's still going to take intentionality, and it's going to take just that focus time. Instead of dumping, I would dump like 4 or 5 hours a night for my FE. I wanted to do it a bit different with the PE. I wanted to do like an hour or two, every single day or a couple of days a week. I wanted to schedule it on kind of during the week. So I still felt like I had a weekend break
Mm.
because I felt like those 4 months I was studying for my FE, I just felt like I don't know what happened that time. It just felt like everything's blacked out and just phased all together. And there's no break. There's no flow or rhythm to my thing compared to when I studied for my PE.
Yeah, it's very awkward to have to just pause life for 4 months because of something. I get it's a goal and it's a big one and you don't want to take it lightly, but it's much better if you could do it the second way you described, kind of taking an hour or two a day. That's a lot, right? You only get 24 hours in a day. If you're going to spend two of them studying, that's a big deal. But four, that's just gobbling up all of your available free time and probably stealing from other things that you might have otherwise been doing as well.
That's what
And how long did that whole process take once you got into that groove?
I would say from when I started studying to taking the exam, let's say about 3 months. Because I was doing some calculations and it was part of my day-to-day kind of work.
Hmm.
It wasn't, I didn't do as much design as I did my previous firm. So it wasn't so hands-on where everything felt synonymous. Again, one of the things I liked about your course is it was broken up into different sections to where I could really just focus on that one section. Say if it was just principles of thermodynamics. And I would even take time and talk to different PEs in my company, and talk to my boss and supervisor and ask them different questions to help me think about the processes and design procedures in different ways.
That's a beautiful thing. I love when people tell me things like that they, during their studying or after they're studying, that something they saw made them think about a specific situation at work or even a hypothetical situation that's related to something you normally do, and bring those ideas to the office and talk to colleagues or managers and say, what would we do in this situation? Or how do you normally think
Yeah.
about this? Because that's what it's all about. We're not just getting this thing only to have the two letters. Obviously, that's part of it. But it's to improve our performance as an engineer. So if you can engage with others in your workplace, clients, contractors, consultants, whatever the case may be, then that's what it's all about. And
Yep.
also you learn things a lot of times. Practice problems are wonderful and they're the right way to get ready for an exam, but we learn so much from stories.
Yep.
And when you bring a specific situation to somebody's mind, that's going to remind them, oh yeah, this one time we did a job over here and this thing happened that we didn't expect or that nobody foresaw. And it's the mistakes and the errors and the unknowns that people remember. Those are the lessons. If you get to extract the lessons from challenges that other people had, then you're getting their experience by download instead of having to go through that pain yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And professionally, sometimes it's more than just pain. Sometimes there's, consequences to making
Right.
mistakes. So it's really valuable to extract those stories. And this is a way to bring that up with people that is not accusing them of anything. You're not sitting them down in a boardroom and having a difficult conversation. You're just saying, hey, have you ever been involved in anything like this? And then it spills out once you get them
Mm-hmm.
talking. That's really cool.
And it's super cool to hear stories like that of just there was a mold issue and we found out this was wrong and that was wrong in the existing conditions and this is how we worked around it, and it's fascinating, and also it's encouraging too that when we come up across new problems, there's really nothing new. It's just maybe a different way to look at it, or
Right.
Someone somewhere has gone through something similar and there's lessons you can extract from that and to try to come up with a solution that you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. We're when we're studying for these exams, we're not on the bleeding edge of any technology. You know, I like to tell people air conditioning's been around for almost 100 years. So the refrigeration cycle isn't new. It's super interesting and it's
Yep.
important and it's useful and it's a tool and we want to know about it, but it's not the most novel thing. It was in probably our grandparents' lifetimes. It
Right.
wasn't in cars in some of our parents' lifetimes, but so what do you remember from your exam when you're kind of getting down to the end of the process? What was that day like? How did you feel, especially compared to your previous attempt?
So one of the things I did for my FE that I repeated for my PE was I took the day before off of work.
Love it.
I think I scheduled it for like a Tuesday or a Wednesday. So I took the previous day off just to kind of give myself one, clear my brain out of any work stuff I had to take care of, where I could really just put all my focus on the exam. Did give me time if there were a few things I didn't feel great about, a few different topics or maybe principles. Did give me some time to be like, okay, let me just brush up on this a little bit more. And I think I went for a walk the day before. I think I just enjoyed studying and relaxing. Slept in a little bit, which felt good.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. Just rest and relax. And if there's something that's really eating you up, then take a look. But unless it's a burning question, just mostly take care of yourself the day before. I think that's very wise.
Yep. And I do remember going for, I woke up the day to take my exam, planning to go early and because I think I planned to be like half an hour early or something. And I knew there was gonna be some traffic because it was gonna be about a 45-minute drive. And just nervous if the car was gonna break down or if there's gonna be an accident somewhere in front of me, and just like, man, I'll hope nothing else happens. So feeling a little on edge. But all in all, I just nervous when I first sat down. But I'll tell you this: I felt so much more comfortable taking the exam my second time than I did my first time. My boss, and if you'd ever meet my boss, and I try to introduce you to him, he'd always go, "No, I'm not your boss. I'm your coworker."
Mm.
And my coworker would say often, he's like, "Man, I loved the PE so much, I took it 3 times.
Just couldn't get enough.
Just couldn't get enough. Just couldn't get enough." And it really has nothing to do with how smart you are. Sometimes it's just about the day and what you're going through. So maybe it's just a season. Sometimes, and I'm fairly certain, I think that it's graded on a scale. So there could be someone super smart that's taking, or a bunch of super smart people taking it, and it may just be hard to get get enough questions right in certain topics that you need.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. I don't know if NC lets those secrets be known, but that could be. And anyway, you can only control what you bring to the table on that day, right? So
Yeah. And if someone is planning to take the exam soon, make sure you take a good lunch, walk around. I know a part of me just felt like, let me just, pile drive through it, knock it out. But then also giving my brain a chance to rest in between those 4-hour sessions, it really, really makes a difference.
I 100% agree with that. I think it's easy to say, I'm just going to put my head down and do this, but it's not an hour.
Yeah.
It's 8 hours. So
Yeah.
you take the middle hour and
Yeah.
take advantage of that. How about walking out of there? You said you felt better during. I would imagine that carried through to the end.
It did. I will say I addressed every question. I know previously I left a lot of questions blank because I couldn't get to them all.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I remember being stuck. The first time I took it, I remember being stuck on one for hours. I felt like I was just clenched on, or I feel like I was just like locked jaw on this one question for so long. I was like, I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna figure it out.
Yeah.
And I just wasted so much time.
Yeah. It's such a tough one because it comes out of just being determined.
Yeah.
And sometimes determination borders on stubbornness,
Yep.
which is a great quality when you have a hard and important problem that you just need to get through. Unfortunately for exams, it can backfire so badly.
So and that's why I didn't do the second time around. When there was a question that I knew it would take a little more thought, I just let it go. I was like, you know what? I'll come back to it. I'll flag it and then come back to it, and walking out, I felt confident that, hey, you know what? I put the time needed on the questions I knew I could figure out the answer for. Then I put a little less time on problems that I might have tried to figure it out, or that I thought I could figure out, but wasn't really quite sure. And then I took minimal time in questions that I was like, you know what? I just don't know.
Right. It's like your base probability is 25%.
Yes.
So if you don't think that putting time and energy into that problem can move you much above 25%, it's a statistical thing. It's not
Yeah.
really, it's not like you're giving up. It's just you've allocated your time to those ones where you can move the needle from 25 to 50. If you can get to chance, you're looking at a coin flip, that's better.
Yep.
And that's how you have to think about it in exams. You would not do that in a professional setting. Like, yeah, I'm more than halfway sure this will work.
Yeah.
Like, no, obviously you'd take that away. And so, there's a time to put on your professional and like how I would handle this in work hat, and there's a time to go back to exam taking
Yeah.
tactics and things like that.
If I could break down the taking the exam and training for the exam in kind of three concepts, almost 3 words, 4 words, I would say it's problem solving, it's prioritization, and it's about humility. And I feel like that kind of boils it down to like problem solving is it's okay. Well, how what's your process of attacking a problem? And working through your course, it really helped me come up with a framework to use and to think through, kind of almost like a checklist. And then prioritizations, like when you're working your career, there are going to be some problems you come across, and there's one thing that's more important than the other. Or maybe you're going to be managing a project. There's one discipline that's going to drive the project, and you have to focus on that discipline. And it could be the same as just doing busy paperwork and filing. And it's like there's some things that need to get done now, and there's other things that can get done later.
Absolutely. I love that. That's like I hope people really take to heart those 3 aspects, right? The problem solving is the critical thinking piece. It's how you attack problems, but then prioritizing and knowing what's really important in this situation, which kind of only comes from experience.
Yeah.
And that experience is hard won, which sort of ties into your third point, because every time you didn't know what you didn't know, the first time you saw a problem like that, you kind of get blindsided and it doesn't feel so great, but it's memorable.
Yep.
Hopefully, if you're not, shut off to the process. That's kind of what learning is getting frustrated or stuck for a while and then saying, all right, well, I didn't know. I'm not going to beat myself up about it. Now I do.
Yep.
Let's do better on the next one. And it takes humility to do that. Boy, I love that. It's a
Yeah.
trifecta.
Trifecta. And I've met a few seasons PEs in the past couple of years, and I'll say the majority of them, if not all, they do have an air of humility of like they haven't seen everything under the sun.
The good ones do, yeah.
Yeah, the good ones do. That's right. They haven't seen everything under the sun, and they're willing to admit that, but they're also determined to work together and to collaborate to come up with a solution.
Yeah, and to get a good quality outcome in the end, as they should and as they often do, because those folks have strong track records of performing over time. So that's the reputation we kind of all would love to have. And it's the folks that already know everything and you can't tell them anything that it just repels others, and you don't want them on. You have them on your project once, and you don't want them back again.
Right. Right.
So, wow, that's great. Well, awesome wisdom there to take away. I usually wrap up these conversations by asking folks if they have one piece of advice. I think that basically covers it. I don't know if there's anything else you'd want to add to that.
Yeah, I think that wraps it up, and I think reps are important. Continuity is important. If you have to take the exam a couple times, like definitely show yourself some grace. No one's perfect. Even the person that says they passed their FE and PE on the first time, I'm fairly certain they failed one thing in their life. So everyone has their flaws, and you're on your own journey. And we're going to continuously be learning for the rest of our lives.
100%. Well, that's a perfect place to leave it, Peter. Thank you so much for coming on. Is there anywhere that you want to send people to learn more about you or what you're working on now?
Yeah, sure. So if you want to see kind of what I've been up to and doing, you can check out the East Group. It's at eastgroup.com. It's a full service engineering firm in North Carolina, and we serve we kind of have 3 major groups: healthcare group, we have a industrial group, and a land planning infrastructure group. So kind of all your engineers wrapped up in there, and architects as well. And if you want to see kind of what I did in Florida with the building forensics, you can check out Crane Atlantis. So that's CRAIN Atlantis. They're in Deerfield, and they do some really cool expert witnessing stuff for different clients, and obviously the building design. So they're really great people as well.
Well, thanks again for joining, Peter, and sharing some wisdom with us today. It's fun to hear your story, and just excited to hear where the future takes you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Dan.
Thanks for listening to the Mechanical PE Exam Prep Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review to help other engineers find the podcast. And if you're looking for a program that will help you pass the PE exam, check out the full access bundle available at mechanicalpeexamprep.com, and feel free to reach out with any questions. I would be honored to be your guide on the journey to becoming a professional engineer.